You ever notice that gap between what people say and what they actually do? Well, today we're going to dive into a piece of commentary that just brilliantly unpacks that very idea. It's all about the truth that's hiding in plain sight, if you just know how to look. So let's start with a question you hear all the time. It's this constant worry in society, right? Are young people losing their values? Are things like empathy and tolerance and community just fading away? And almost every single time, the finger points to one place, the classroom. The thinking goes, hey, if we just fix the textbooks, if we just tweak the curriculum, we can teach better values. Well, that's the conventional wisdom that this whole argument is about to turn on its head. But what if we're looking in the completely wrong place? What if the most powerful classroom isn't a school building at all? The argument we're digging into today suggests that the biggest lessons kids learn come from the society they see every single day. And the most influential teacher? The state itself. Okay, so let's get into it. First up, the values debate. To really get what's going on here, you have to understand how this argument is being made. It's written with what you might call controlled candor. It's a pretty brave piece, carefully navigating a world where speaking freely can be risky. It's telling the truth, but it's doing it very, very carefully. And at the absolute heart of this whole thing is one single powerful insight. It's the idea that completely reframes the entire debate about schools and values. And here it is. Values are not taught. They are absorbed. Just let that sink in. This one simple, kind of devastating sentence shifts our focus completely away from the textbooks and forces us to look at the world right outside the school gates. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that if the people in power act without any regard for the law, if the public square is full of hypocrisy, then any talk of values education in schools, well, it stops being education. It just becomes propaganda. So how does this actually play out in the real world? The author gives us some really specific, carefully chosen examples to show how the state teaches its real lessons, not with words, but with actions. Let's read between the lines. For example, the article talks about journalists getting fired or TV shows getting pulled off the air. But this one line is the key. Often, a call is enough. Think about that. No written orders, no official memos, just a phone call. This phenomenon actually has a name. Informal authoritarianism. And that one phrase, a call is enough, describes it perfectly. It's a system where fear, not the law, is the main tool of control. And what happens? People start censoring themselves, automatically. Next, the author goes into even more dangerous territory, the judiciary. The piece mentions how rules and laws can be bent to sideline independent judges, to ruin their reputations. And notice how carefully it's phrased. No specific names are mentioned. The fact that there are no names, no dates, no specific cases, that's not a flaw in the argument, not at all. In an environment where calling out power can get you in serious trouble, this kind of strategic silence is really a tool for survival. Okay, so this brings us to what the system is really teaching about power. And a big part of that is how the law itself can be turned into a weapon. And this illustrates one of the system's most powerful lessons. It's how legal cases get weaponized. See, it's not about whether you're guilty or innocent. The punishment is the process itself. You're dragged through the courts for months, maybe years. By the time you get a verdict, even if you're found innocent, your time, your money, your reputation, it's all gone. The damage is already done. It's basically law as a war of attrition. So, what's the big lesson here on being a citizen? Well, on the left, you've got the ideal you learn about in civics class. But on the right, you see the reality that's enforced on the streets, where protesting is criminalized and disagreeing is seen as a threat. The state is teaching that the only good citizen is an obedient one. All right, all of these observations about the media, the courts, the law, they're all building towards one final, emotionally devastating point. This is the article's knockout punch. It's an unanswerable question. Let that one hang in the air for a moment. Seriously, how can you teach a kid about justice from a book when they see injustice all around them being rewarded? How do you talk about fairness when they see power being abused every single day? There's just no good answer. So what you've got is kids being put in a totally impossible position. They're being asked to learn all these wonderful values that are openly mocked by the very world they live in. But here's the thing. They aren't confused. Oh no. They're learning exactly what the system is teaching them, that power, not principles, is what really matters.
And all this forces us to ask one last question. If this article so completely dismantles the whole idea of fixing values through schools, then what is it really about?
Well, it turns out this piece isn't really about education reform at all. It's using that topic as a kind of safe cover to deliver a really powerful critique of state hypocrisy, of institutions that are rotting from the inside out, and of the deep, lasting damage that's being done to an entire generation. So yeah, this isn't some friendly proposal for the education ministry. Not even close. It is a clear-eyed, urgent warning about what happens to a society that says one thing while doing the complete opposite. And this is the final verdict. When that gap between words and actions gets this massive, it's not education anymore. It's a form of psychological manipulation. It's gaslighting. It's teaching kids to distrust not just the state, but their own sense of what's right and wrong. And that leaves us with one final, pretty chilling question to think about. What happens to a society when its children can no longer tell the difference between education and propaganda? What does that future look like?